T-minus 1 minute. T-minus 50 seconds. T-minus 40 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to Joe Sports Channel, ladies and gentlemen, and to all the wonderful and fantastic, beautiful Boonie believers. It is August 7th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time in this beautiful city alone, London, Ontario. To all the wonderful fans that have been supporting me day in and day out, today's show, tonight's show, this evening show, however you want to call it, is one to remember for a very long time. Folks, we have a wonderful man that very soon will be making that telephone call. But further ado, let's bring our co-host from Vancouver, British Columbia, himself, Mr. Tino D'Antonio. Good afternoon, my colleague Tino. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Joe. I'm telling you, our passages to getting old is moving really fast. I thought the long weekend happened here in Canada, 3 days ago, and here it is. The long weekend has almost come to an end.
Time flies, I'm telling you. You've been what, 8, 9 broadcasts now? It felt like yesterday we interviewed Jack Armstrong.
Something like that. Yeah.
Now we're with Jim Barker now. So, anyways, it's 3 o'clock.
Looking forward to it.
It's 3 o'clock. He told us to call us at 3. We better call him at 3. If not, he's going to cancel our appointment, and we don't want that on Joe Sports.
No, I don't want that to happen.
Here we go. Let's get this.
Hi, Joe.
Good afternoon, Jim Barker. To Joe Boone, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
You know what, man? I can't complain on this beautiful Monday afternoon with you and my colleague, Tino D'Antonio. We're live on air right now. How are things?
Oh, real good. Real good. I'm excited to be on with you.
We're excited too. Tino, it's Jim Barker. Jim Barker, it's Tino.
Jim, it's a pleasure.
How are you?
Thank you.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. So my first question, Jim Barker. Once again, my friend, thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I'm very fortunate and honored to have you on this beautiful podcast on this beautiful Monday. Jim, your career in football spans over 40 years, which is a lifetime commitment. When did you see yourself knowing the sport of football was going to be your main objective?
Actually, when I graduated from high school, I had played football and was going to go play in junior college. I hurt my knee, and I don't know. I had started umpiring baseball, and had gotten I had umpired a UCLA baseball game back when I was 19 years old, and so I had moved up the ranks very quickly in umpiring. I owned my own association, and I was going to go to umpire school, and a good friend of mine who was a sports writer for the Pasadena paper and kind of an idol of mine. He coached kids baseball and football and basketball, and I got to know him, and he said, you can always instead of going to umpire school, why don't you go to college, get your degree, and then go to umpire school? And that way you have something to fall back on, because it's tough after you go to the minor leagues. And if you end up not making it or not liking it, now you're going to be in your middle to late 20s and trying to figure out what you're going to do. So I was going to actually go be a Major League Baseball umpire. That was my initial deal. And then during college, as I decided to do what he said. I went to junior college and then transferred and went to USC. And during that time, I started coaching football. I had always played football. I had never coached it. And I coached a kids team in Arcadia, California, where I grew up. And I coached a high school team at Lenox High School in LA, right across the street from LAX. And I just fell in love with coaching football. And I decided, I got my degree from USC, and I volunteered at a small college there, Occidental College, where they don't even play football anymore. And, the rest is kind of history. I just decided, I told my mom, I'm changing my major from business to PE, and I'm going to coach football. And I volunteered. I got $500 for the season. I coached the offensive line at Occidental College. And then the head coach there had played and coached at San Francisco State. And he said, listen, Jim, they actually had made me the head coach after a year because the coach left, went to UOP, and I was like the head coach while they were finding a coach. I was just out of college though, so I decided to go that route. He got the guy at Occidental. They brought in the new coach I didn't like. He lied to me, and so I left. Went to San Francisco State as a graduate. I was a graduate student, so I taught PE classes and coached football and worked for very little money. And Mike Holmgren, who ended up coaching the Super Bowl Green Bay Packers.
Go Packers, go.
He was a high school coach at the time. We hired him as a coach. And, it was just one of those things. Mike and I left the same year in 1981. He went to BYU, and I got my first full-time job back at Occidental where I had been. And the rest is kind of history. It's just, it was, I moved up the hard way. I went the small college route, and, I had a chance to go with Mike twice, and it just didn't work out time-wise for me. I mean, once was the day I got hired, or the week I got hired as the head coach of the Argos in '99. So my relationships there, when Mike and I left, Andy Reid, he was one of the guys that came in and replaced us, and a guy named Dirk Cutter. So those two guys came in and replaced us. And so I got to know Andy and Dirk real well. And Dirk went on, and he was a head coach, I think, for the Falcons or something for a little bit. And then Andy's obviously Andy Reid, who is now, so some real good coaches went through there. I was exposed to, the way you really do it. And our boss there, a guy named Vic Rowan, he was just connected with everybody. He knew everybody. And I don't know, I started coaching football. I loved it. And that I committed myself to being as good as I could be, and was fortunate in 1996. Bob Price, the Montreal Alouettes, came back from Baltimore, and Bob had been the defensive coordinator of the Baltimore team in the expanded to the US CFL. And I had known Bob and Don Winneck, who was going to be on Bob's staff at the University of Nevada, in my tour around Western United States. And like I say, that brought me to Canada. I had been a guest coach in 1994 for Ray Yock in Saskatchewan. And Pat Perlis went up there as the offensive line coach. I never coached offensive line. Said, Jim, can you come up with me and as a guest coach? So I went up as a guest coach. It was my first experience. Glenn Suter was a free safety, and Ray Elgard was playing, and some of the players that at the time I didn't know were all-time greats, and it was just such a great, fun experience. And so 2 years later, when Bob called me and asked me if I'd go as the co-offensive coordinator and offensive line coach to Montreal, and with the franchise just coming back, I said absolutely. So I was a baseball coach, actually, baseball and football at Pomona College, and decided, you know what, I'm going to make the move to professional sports. And I knew it was risky. I knew there was a chance things, the league was very volatile back then. So I went to Canada, and it's just, Canada's been great to me. I mean, I've had chances to move and multiple occasions, and just I chose to stay there. It was I love Canada, and I've become a citizen since. And my grandkids were born here. Now they're all in the States now, but it's been fantastic for me. And the fans, the way the fans are, the way the league interacts with the fans, it's so much different than U.S. football. And it's the greatest three-down football, which is a different game. And I think too often we get lost in that, and people try to think of us like a feeder to the NFL and things. It's so not like that. It's so different, because there are a lot of guys playing in the NFL that can't play in our league because of the difference in rules and the spatial part of the game and that type of thing. So, it's been a phenomenal experience for me. I've gotten a chance to experience everything from being an assistant coach to being a coordinator to being a head coach to being a GM to being a senior vice president. And then now I'm fortunate enough to be able to be on television and share my experiences, with a fan base across the country that I truly, truly adore. I think they are. I'm as lucky a man as there is. I've never worked a day in my life, is the way I look at it.
Yeah. Right on. Joe, I got to jump in. I mean, I was going to say, Joe, did you share these questions with Jim? Because like the history that he's given, because, of course, I wanted to jump in, but it's almost like he knows the questions that we're going to ask. And we really appreciate this, Jim, because I was going to go into reviewing your historical positions with the football leagues generally. And I was going to ask you if you could tell the listeners, what experience did you gain by being involved with the CFL, the XFL, which was founded by Vince McMahon sometime in the early 2018, and the NCAA? And was there one significant league? That would have been my question. Was there one significant league that you particularly enjoyed? And it seems like you've already answered that.
The guy knows our questions.
I didn't know, have any idea. I don't know. I tried to put it in a nutshell. I know it ended up being pretty long, but it's hard when you're my age, to make the few people in the world that have I coached in college football in the U.S. and the NCAA, it's called. I coached all three levels: Division I, the major college. I coached in Division II, and I coached in Division III, which are the small academic schools. That was what Pomona College was, and I loved all three of them. They were all very different, but I loved all of them, and they were all important in my growth. I went to the XFL. I had been the head coach in Toronto. I came up in '96, and then I worked. My first year was with Bob in Montreal, and then the owners decided they didn't want to be owners anymore in the CFL. They were from Baltimore, and so they just stopped paying us. And unfortunately, Don Matthews had been the head coach in Baltimore, and all the players that were on that team in Montreal told Don that, you know, I was a good coach and that he should try to hire me. So the next year in '97, Adam Rita and Charlie Carpenter left to go to BC, and Don called and offered me the position in Toronto, and the quarterback was Doug Flutie, and, you know, we won the Grey Cup. He's the greatest player I've ever been around, and I'll never be around a better player in terms of, I mean, being able to learn as a coach from a player, like as much as I learned from Doug Flutie, I can't ever repay the guy enough. That's how fabulous that was. And I actually had a chance in '97. I got hired by Don, and a week later, I got offered the offensive coordinator job at the University of Virginia with George Welsh, which is a major Division I school down there. It was at 3 times the money I was making up here, but the chance to work with Doug Flutie was too good, so I said no, and it was the best move I ever made. I mean, I'm kind of proud of the fact I've never made career decisions on money. I've always been just made them based on what I think are best for me and best, you know, I want to love what I do and best for my career. And that was one of them, that turning that down and staying in Canada at that point was good. So in '97, I was here, and then '98. Then in '99, Don left and went to Edmonton, and I was named, Bob Nicholson named me the head coach, and we went 9-9, and that's what we were. We were an average team. Kerwin Bell was our quarterback. Jay Barker came in. It was his rookie year, and then in '99, at the end of '99, and I never got fired. I went in January. I knew the team was up for sale. Labatt's, we were owned by Labatt's in '99, and my kids were in school, so I was living up here, and I went in one day in January, and my key no longer worked at the trailers over in Mississauga. So I called the league office. I said, hey, my key's not working. Do you know what's up? He goes, oh yeah, we should have called you. The team was sold, and you're part of the deal. So I had 1 year left on the contract, and the XFL was starting, and I had 2 opportunities there. One with Dick Butkus in Chicago. He had offered me. He didn't even make it as he ended up giving it up before it even started. But he had offered me the coordinator job, and then Al Luganville in LA, and that's where I went. And I lived with my mother actually, and because my family, we built a home in Las Vegas because I was moving a lot after the thing in Toronto happened. So yeah, so I went to the XFL, and it was the most fun. Probably the most fun I ever had coaching. Al Luganville was a great head coach, a great personnel guy. I had never been around a head coach who was as good a personnel guy. I learned more from Don Matthews than anybody. But the XFL was great fun for me. And I got a chance to coach Tommy Maddox and Scott Milanovich were my 2 quarterbacks. And we won the XFL championship. And it was just, the motivation for all the players made the same amount of money. And if you won, they got a $2,500 bonus. And we got win bonuses if we won the games. And that, made our salary better. And then we played the championship game was called the $1 Million Game.
I remember that.
And what $1 Million Game man did was put $1 million in a pot, and the winner takes all and splits it however they want. So
wow.
We all got $27,000 each for winning the $1 Million Game. And he told us the week of the game, he told us the rings are going to be, they're going to put the Super Bowl and the NFL rings to shame. Well, obviously we won it, and we went and got fitted for rings, had no idea what was going to happen. Well, in the next month, they had league meetings, and Vince decided to fold the league because the TV was affecting his wrestling, and there was just some issues, and he just folded the league. And so, I was there I was left with left with no job again. And then Don left Edmonton, went to Montreal, called me to come as his coordinator. And it was Anthony Calvillo's first year really as a starting quarterback in Montreal. And obviously we went and won the Grey Cup. And then I went on to Calgary thinking I could replace Wally Buono, which was a stupid decision. But, it kind of just set my career off. And I went to Calgary, replacing Wally Buono for an owner who bought the team so his kid could play quarterback. So at the end of the year, I felt I was misled a lot in terms of when I took that job, in terms of how things would be with the owner. And so at the end of the season, I cut his son when he was over in Europe, and he came back and fired me 2 days before Christmas. So
what a great Christmas gift, huh, Jim?
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, like I say, a lot of people have no idea of some of the things I've gone through in this league. And then I stayed in, my daughter was living with me and going through some, we were living in Calgary, and it was just she and I, and she was in the middle of some treatment and things. And so I basically just stayed there. I was getting paid another year, and I had a radio show and kind of doing what you guys are doing, back in those days. And then at the end of the season, they had brought Matt Dunnigan in, the owners, to replace me. And Matt, he did as good a job as he could do. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. And the new owners in the city, John Frazani and Ted Hellard and Dave Sapungis, in Calgary. Calgary was on the verge. We talk about Edmonton right now being on the cusp of having major problems with attendance. I mean, Calgary was down under 5,000 people. They didn't like the owner. They didn't like a lot, and they just kind of boycotted the Stampeders. Well, the owners bought the team, and they came to me and said, "Listen, Tom Higgins is going to be our coach. Can you be our general manager?" Well, I had never done that before, but I said, absolutely. And it's kind of different than being a head coach, general manager, because I was not involved at all in the coaching part. Tom handled all that. And I basically immersed myself in the front office, and I was the only person we had. I didn't have any scouts. I taught myself. They basically, Frazani and Hellard and that group wanted to they wanted to start fresh. Shouldn't say fire, because it wasn't about getting rid of people. It was about being able to put people they wanted there. And so, like I say, Tom became the head coach. I became the general manager. And I learned. Ted Hellard was a great businessman. So I learned being a GM differently than guys like Dave Dickinson right now, and the guys who were head coach GMs. They kind of learned the GM job as a coach, where you're not really fully committed to it. I was fully committed. I did all the scouting. I went to the NFL camps. I set up the whole hit lists and all the things you have to do in setting up a front office. And we actually went 11-7 that first year. In 2005, we signed Henry Burris, and he became the quarterback. And then in 2008, the ownership wanted to bring Huff in, as he had played with a lot of the guys on that ownership group. And so it was kind of my first taste of, I don't want to call it the dirty side, but we get fired and things in coaching and that so much. And, we were getting ready for the playoffs, and they said, "Jim, you're going to fly." And Tom Higgins was our coach in 2007. And they said, "Jim, you're going to fly down to Arizona and meet with John Hufnagel, because he's going to become the coach. We're going to fire Tom." And so I flew down to Arizona, met a week with Huff, helped him set his first staff up, and explained to him about it, because he hadn't been in the league in a long time. He had been in the league before, but hadn't been in it over 10 years. He'd been coaching an arena league, the NFL, and things like that. So helped him get everything set up, and then he wanted to be the head coach and general manager, and I'm not the type that cares about that stuff. I just want to win. And I became the senior vice president, and Huff became the head coach and GM, and in his first year, we won the Grey Cup. So it was exciting to me to go into what we started in 2005, and then by 2008 to win the Grey Cup was real exciting. So, I learned being a GM differently than the guys who were head coach GM. Then I went back to being head coach GM in 2010, and so. Again, I don't mean to ramble on, guys.
No. This is your show too, Jim Barker. I'm learning. I'm learning. I love all the detail.
I'm trying to give you some background that a lot of people don't.
No, and Jim. I read on Wikipedia and I read on all this, and I'd rather hear it from your voice than the internet. So there's a lot of information that I don't know about Jim Barker. Now I know about Jim Barker. Now, do you have any relationship with the legend himself, Vince McMahon, or any talk with Vince? No, you don't, huh?
It did not end great between he and I, because basically what happened was they disbanded the league. I actually thought I was going to become a head coach in that league because they were going to expand to Philadelphia, and he wanted to hire coaches from inside the league. Well, I was a coordinator of the league champion, and they asked me if I had an interest in being the head coach in Philadelphia. So at the beginning of the week of meetings, they asked if I would have an interest in being the head coach in Philadelphia. And obviously I did. And I was young at the time and that's what I wanted to do. I was excited. So at the end of the week, Al Luganville calls me and says, "Jimmy, you're sitting down." And I thought he was going to tell me, you're the head coach in Philadelphia. And he said, the league. And I said, "What?" And so they folded the league. Well, what they did was they told all of us, all the assistant coaches, the head coaches made a lot of money and they were going to get paid another year. They told the assistant coaches, "You're going to get paid for one more month." Well, I rallied the assistants together, and we had a lot of guys. I had gotten a job working in Las Vegas in a boiler room selling car insurance to dealerships, and guys were living in cities doing things because you can't get a job in May in coaching. Football coaching jobs all happen in December and January. You don't get jobs in May. That's when everybody's going to training camp. So they were going to stop paying us, and we had coaches, Jim Hillis, who spent some time in the CFL. He had moved his family, his wife, across the country to LA from Florida, and it's just stuck there. And I said, "You can't do this. You can't put coaches in this situation where we're just going to stop getting paid." And I had a kid who had played for me at Occidental early in my career, was a labor lawyer, and I talked to him, and he was trying to help us on the legal side. And then there was a guy in the for the USA Today who was going to write a pretty nasty article about what he had done to the lives of all the assistant coaches. And he actually kind of they called us before like a week before they were supposed to stop, and said they were going to give us benefits and pay for one full year, one calendar year. So that was a great thing. And so, I mean, it ended okay, but it got a little dicey at that point. But Vince never talked to us. He talked to us, but not it wasn't a personal kind of thing. Like with Randy Ambrosi, I could go up to Randy and talk to Randy. It wasn't like that with Mr. McMahon. It was when he was there, you just were kind of in awe and kept your mouth shut. I met The Rock because I was with the LA team, and The Rock would come out. He came out to the Coliseum, and so we met him, but he wouldn't know me if I walked in his office right now. So.
Yeah, well, he's been through a lot of people, a lot of connections,
Yeah.
And they said Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, is actually a really, really good guy, well-hearted person. And I hear a lot of good things about Dwayne Johnson.
He seems like it.
Yeah. Jim, to close this question and answering session, are you enjoying the role as a TSN analyst, and where do you see yourself going from here?
I love what I'm doing. I really do. It's I was a consultant with Hamilton and in 2019 and I don't want to coach anymore. I ended up coaching that year because June Jones had left, and so I ended up coaching it for the year, and it was fine. I enjoyed it, but that's not what I want to do at this point. I mean, what I love what I love still doing is running a team and setting up, hiring people, watching people move forward in this business. I mean, I had a young Chris Rossetti, who was a young guy who had never done anything in personnel, and hired him here in Toronto. And then 3 years later, he got a job with the Miami Dolphins. He's director of pro personnel with the New York Giants. He was replaced by another Guelph guy, Curtis Ruckavina, and he worked two years, I think, and he then went to Buffalo. He's now just moving up the ladder with the Buffalo Bills. Ted Gobaya had never been in personnel. He's now an assistant GM in this league. And a lot of the guys coaching in the league came through, our organization in Toronto from 2010 through 2000, when I got fired in 2017. So it's exciting for me to watch guys move up the ladder. And if I could do that again and be like a president of operations or a general manager, I'm not sure I want to do that. I'd like to be like set the whole thing up. I would do that again, but that's the only thing. I love what I'm doing now. Getting a chance to do like I'm doing with you guys.
Yeah.
To tell stories, to talk about the way things were. Like, you guys weren't even born back when some of that stuff happened. And the CFL has such a storied history, and there's, now I'm one of the oldest guys, if not the oldest guy in the league, and I can relate these stories. And the CFL, again, people don't understand how great a league they have here. I mean, there are not a lot of leagues you can go to a game, and then after the game, players are going to come up and talk to you, and they care about their communities, and so many American players have moved up here and moved into their cities, and they become a part of the fabric of the community. Willie Jefferson, what he's done, and Adam Bighill in Winnipeg, and it happens all over the place. And Wynton McManus has moved up here and into Toronto, and Chad Kelly is becoming a big part of the fabric of Toronto, and it just is it's exciting to watch. And I think that your generation, your age group of people are starting to see the CFL isn't the NFL.
No.
It's a different entity, and to understand the game and to understand. I mean, the game we had last night was one of the all-time classics. It had so many crucial decisions by coaches that, again, they're half of the people watching are going to say they did the right thing, and half are going to say they did the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Great game when you have that. Yeah. It just creates so much. And so the more, again, my job, I feel, is to get people watching games and understanding what a beautiful, beautiful game we have, and to embrace it and enjoy it. And, as you guys now grow and you have kids and you expose your children to it and you expose your families to it, because, again, if I just feel like that's kind of my mission now is to spread the greatness of what the CFL is all about. And it's just going to, I believe, going to continue growing. I think it's at one of the strongest points it's been at since I've been in the league, and that's a great thing.
I gotta say something, Jim, and you said that perfectly. The script is said like we say. Why is the Canadian Football League not as big as it should be? Like, you look at guys like Anthony Calvillo, should have been in the NFL, played for Montreal for all of his life. Why isn't CFL as big as it was as like XFL? XFL was bigger than CFL. You had more people watching it. Is it because the population in Canada and people don't really pay attention? What is it exactly? because it makes me angry. You see the Grey Cup.
When I was in it,
the Grey,
it was new and different.
Yeah, in the Grey Cup, it's a lot older than the Super Bowl. So that just makes me confused to myself. It's like, I wish the CFL, they could sell out more. The Montreal, Alouettes, the Toronto Argonauts, the Edmonton Elks, not a big fan of their name, the Ottawa Red Blacks. I wish you can see 50, 60,000 people at those stadiums, and tickets are cheap. People should support the venue of the CFL more than anything, especially in this country, Canada, because we're full of sports. We like the Blue Jays. We like the Leafs. We like the Raptors. There should be more venue for CFL.
I'm completely with you, Joe. I'm completely with you. I'll tell you what I think. In 1990, 1991, 1992, the CFL could attract players from the NFL. The NFL then started to get the TV deals, and gambling became a big part of what blew the NFL up. And the NFL started to make a lot of money to the point that their salaries went up. And I'm not going to say that they squashed the CFL. I think that the CFL did some poor things in terms of some of the management, back in the early 2000s, and there was teams in trouble and teams folding, and people looked at the league like hanging on by a thread instead of embracing the greatest three-down football in the world. Like Randy Ambrosie right now is doing things with global players where he's forcing, part of the rules are you have to have global players. Well, that's fantastic. Well, why not go into some of those countries and teach them the rudiments of three-down football? It's much more conducive to fields in Australia and
it's a harder game.
Europe, because it's closer to a soccer field. Soccer fields are 65 yards wide. So is a CFL field.
It's a harder game, Jim.
Much more conducive to what they know. Teach our game around the world. This is the greatest three-down football in the world. We're not four-down football. We're not trying to be four-down football. We're not a feeder league. We have a lot of guys in this league that are phenomenal athletes, that are phenomenal players in three-down football. It's like saying that people who are – it's like comparing beach volleyball and volleyball, six-person volleyball. They have a different number of players, but it's a totally different game. Beach volleyball is 2-on-2. It draws its own crowd, and that's what we should be doing: drawing our own crowd. And instead of being a minor league and acting like which I think there was a long time we acted like a minor league. I don't even bring that term up. It makes my skin crawl.
No, it's an insult, Jim. It's an insult too. Like, come on, the Canadian Football League's been around forever.
Much longer than the NFL.
And to go back, I'm just so frustrated. And I talked to so many people over the years. I'm a sports fanatic. I watched the NFL. I'm a big Packers fan. But I was a huge Montreal Alouettes. And I was so ticked off. Anthony freaking Calvillo wasn't drafted to the NFL. Anthony Calvillo is one of the greatest Canadian Football League players, quarterbacks of all time. And the guy never got drafted to the NFL. But you have guys that can't even throw 55 yards and they're backup quarterbacks. And then the NFL? Are you kidding me? That's a bunch of BS. Anthony Calvillo should have been drafted. Just makes me sick sometimes. Some of these players aren't drafted. Give them opportunities.
Keep preaching the word of the CFL seriously, because to me, getting your age group and your demographic that listen to your podcast excited about the CFL is what needs to happen. If that happens, the CFL is going to take off. The more people that watch, the more people that go to games. I mean, you go to a CFL game, and at most venues, it's just a great experience.
Yeah.
I mean, even you come over here, they now are there's a lot of tailgating. There's a lot of things you can do in Toronto. But you go to Calgary, there's tailgating all over. It's a great game day experience. I just went to a because as a fan, for the first time ever this year, I wasn't working. I went to the Toronto BC game, and it was just a lot of fun. And I took 3 people that had never been to a game, and they absolutely had a blast. And I think if people come out and they see how much, what kind of value they can get, that's what's going to grow the league. It used to be, if you were a CFL fan, you had to be in the closet in Toronto. Yeah. And, we almost got over that when we won the 2012 Grey Cup, but then we didn't capitalize on it and continue to grow it at that point. And, there were some things that happened in the front office in terms of the business side that changed. And so we had a chance back then. But, I feel it. I just feel a sense. The Toronto Argonauts right now are one of the top teams. If they're one of the top 2 teams in the league. And like I say, lost last week, but we're the top team in the league. You have a great team. You have a great young quarterback. And again, people are going to, Chad Kelly, is he going to go back to the NFL? I don't know. But what a great opportunity for people in Canada for a very reasonable price to be able to go and watch a great young player. I'm telling you, there are not 30 quarterbacks in the world better than Chad Kelly. I just believe that.
No, I agree, man. I agree. There's so much opportunity in this Canadian Football League, but people don't preach it enough, Jim.
But you know what? That's why I'm on your show, because your show gets to the people that we have to get to. You guys every day on your podcast are talking to the group that can change things around.
Yeah. Man, I hope
for sure
one day that the Canadian Football League can be, and I say this with respect, like the NFL, maybe, I don't know, maybe in a different time, maybe I won't be here, maybe Jim won't be here, maybe Tina won't be here, but I hope they can take off in some sort of degree. I know my colleague, Tino D'Antoni, wanted to ask something. Do you still have a question, Tino?
Well, yeah. I don't want to leave some of our guests behind, but I've got a couple of questions from some of our listeners, Jim. And one was a 2-part question, and this guest is, or the audience individual here is asking, is there anything that you would change, looking back at things as things happened? Is there anything that you would have changed, Jim, and why?
Wow.
And I guess it's got to do with your positions, your roles, of course, with those positions and roles that you went into, and looking for betterment in your life and so forth. It obviously had some kind of an effect. Was it hard on the family? That's the question here that I have from one of the listeners.
Okay, I'd love to talk about that. Okay, in terms of hard on my family, it definitely was. And the whole thing of balance, work-life balance, is much more prevalent now than it was when I got into this. And I had a wife and 4 children, and was not as good a husband as I could have been. Now, my wife has passed away, but
sorry,
I was not as good a husband as I could have been. I was very focused on becoming. I wanted to be at top of the world in coaching. That was what I felt was important to me. And again, I wasn't as good a husband. I don't think I was as good a dad. Now, I've got 4 great kids that disagree with me when I tell them, I wasn't as good a dad as I could have been. And they, there are 2 of them live in Las Vegas. One is a pit boss at Bellagio, and the other is an actress, a working actress. And 2 of them live in Klamath Falls. And, I don't think I was as good a dad. I believe that anything worthwhile you achieve in life, you're going to sacrifice. And I sacrificed family. I was not as good as I could be at that part of it. Now, I'm fortunate in that my daughters are all up and very successful and doing things that they love doing and, that kind of thing. But so from that standpoint, yes, in terms of changing anything, there are things at the time, obviously nobody likes getting fired, but I started a tradition. And this was back with my first wife when I get fired, go buy a bottle of champagne. And because I had never been fired, I got fired in actually early at New Mexico State. But the first time I got fired, I went and bought a bottle of champagne and toasted to the next great thing that's going to happen. And sure enough, something great would happen. And so at the time you think, wow, I should have done this differently. But it worked out exactly as it should. I really wouldn't change a thing. The experiences I went through, obviously, I look back and say, what kind of an idiot thinks he's going to go in and handle a guy who bought the team so his kid could play quarterback? When Wally Buono, one of the great coaches in the history of this league, couldn't do it, made me think I could do it. And you look at it and say, in hindsight, that's really stupid. But I wouldn't change it. Because without that, I would not have gotten the opportunity to be a general manager. And that general manager experience was great fun. I got a chance to have a radio show in Calgary. That 2004, the year I didn't coach that's what I did was just did radio. And so I got a chance to do what you guys are doing. And so, I don't think I would change a thing. I think my life has turned out exactly as it's supposed to. I'm now happy living in Toronto, and I'm doing something. I get a chance to be on with guys like you who are going to spread the word of the CFL and the excitement and understand some of the history through the stories. That I've been able to accumulate through the years just through longevity.
Right.
As I listen to,
I don't know if that answers that. But.
No,
Yes,
I think it does.
It does.
It does answer our colleague's question from the views. Now, before I let you go, Jim Barker, I have a few moments left. I'm looking at the Canadian Football League standings, and I have a bet for you, my friend. I first want to go with the standings. We got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are 6-2. You got the BC Lions are 6-2. You got the Saskatchewan Roughriders are 4-4. You got the Calgary Stampeders are 3-5, and you got the Edmonton Elks are 0-8. Now, are the Elks going to win a game this year, Jim?
They will win a game.
They will. Okay. They will.
They will win a game. I've seen some really, really bad teams win a game.
You got Toronto.
They're not a very good football team. They're in a bit of disarray, and their quarterback situation is difficult, and it's hard to fix a quarterback situation when your offensive line is as bad as theirs is. So, again, I do believe, though, they will win a game. Chris Jones and I have won 3 Grey Cups together. I have a lot of confidence that there's going to come a game when he's going to shut somebody down completely, and they'll find a way to get a win. So I'm going to say they will win a game.
You got Toronto that is 6-1. You got Montreal that is 4-3. You got Hamilton that is 3-5, and you got the Ottawa Red Blacks that are 3-5. Now, Jim, out of the West Division, who has that division?
Well, I like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as long as Zach Calero stays healthy. I believe they're the cream of the crop with BC right there. BC's playing great defense, and they have 2 quarterbacks, which no other team in the league has proven that they have. So I'm going to pick Winnipeg to win that as long as Zach Calero stays healthy. Now, Zach gets concussed or Zach gets injured in the next couple of weeks, that's off the table. I now believe the BC Lions would win the West.
Yeah. East Division. Who do you got?
Well, I picked Toronto before the season on our preview show on TSN. I picked Toronto to win the division and win the Grey Cup, so I'm not going to change from that. Can Chad Kelly stay healthy? They've played Cameron Duke some. I don't think they can win it with him. Brian Scott, we haven't seen yet. So we don't know, but as long as, again, Chad Kelly stays healthy, I see them. But, he's shown he's had little injuries the last 2 weeks. The most important ability that any pro football player can have is availability. And if you can't stay available and stay healthy, then it's that makes a huge difference in who's going to win. So I'm going to say that Toronto's going to win, and in second, again, I would pick at this point. I would pick Montreal because I say Cody Fajardo, over the quarterbacks playing at Dustin Crum and. Whoever.
Ottawa's in a mess. Ottawa has like 3 quarterbacks that are out. We just interviewed Dan Busbumbo, and he's injured. And Ottawa is they're in a mess right now, Jim. Sorry for cutting you off.
Yeah, a little bit. Dustin Crum he reminds me of Dan Lefevre, who played a few years ago, for people who remember, from Central Michigan. Very similar type guy. Doesn't throw the ball great, has great legs, can run the ball. But, it's hard to win with that guy as your quarterback week in, week out once teams start preparing for him. And I think Ottawa's finding that out. That game they played with Saskatchewan was phenomenal. Saskatchewan's got quarterback, when Trevor went down, Mason Fine, I thought he played excellent yesterday. I mean, that's what you're gonna get. They had the backup, the 13 or quarterback kid, Dolagala, who goes in on third down and didn't get one at the end of the game, and earlier fumbled one and gave them Ottawa a touchdown that kept them in the game. So I don't know that Ottawa is going to be good enough offensively. They play Toronto this Sunday, and that ought to be a real interesting game, especially if Chad Kelly doesn't play. That ought to be a real interesting game because they've seen Dustin Crum, but he's going to be more experienced than whoever Toronto plays if they play Dukes or Brian Scott.
I got Toronto too.
There's so much intrigue. If you really study our league, every week the games going in, there's so much intrigue. There really is exciting. Like Winnipeg goes into Edmonton. Can Edmonton get their first win?
You never know, man. You don't know. It's like saying, can the 0-16 Cleveland Browns beat, the Kansas City Chiefs, back then, and they did, their first to win.
There you go. I would say no to that.
Yeah. I got Toronto and I got Winnipeg. Tino, who do you have? You got in the East Division?
I've got, if you can move that thing up there, Joe, I just want to see that. I've got Winnipeg in the West, and I do have Montreal in the East Division.
Okay. So you have that. 3 of us all picked. Now, who's winning the whole Grey Cup, Jim? And this is a huge thing. Right. If you're right, you get a beautiful, beautiful meal.
Perfect. I'm going to pick Toronto.
So if Toronto wins the Grey Cup, you live in Toronto, you get your butt down here to London, Ontario, and we go to the steak, to the keg, and I feed you the best steak meal you ever had of the Jim Barker life. And we have a show at Joe Booney's show. Okay? And I swear.
I can't wait, Joe.
And I hope Toronto wins.
Forgetting that one.
And I will screen record that, and I will send it to you.
I love coming to London. I mean,
we love you.
Western and going to games there is fantastic. And I love London. So I will definitely be there.
Jim, it has been more than a pleasure. My colleague has a few words left to say. Tino?
Well, Jim, I get the whole thing about the dynamics of bringing some more people to the table, bringing people to the game. I think I've got box seats. It's sometime in September where BC meets Winnipeg. The reason why I picked Winnipeg is because I'm a Winnipeg born. So Winnipeg has always been my team on the CFL. But we're going to get these box seats, and there's about 6 of us going, and it's only going to cost us $30 each. And where can you go to an event? And I've been to other football games, and let me tell you, it's a hoot. And you're absolutely right. After the game, you see the players, approaching the stands, people talking to each other. There's such a great engagement with the people, and the fans that are going, like, they're just a hoot. Like, they're all having a good time. Win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter. You can't go anywhere and go and watch a game, a professional game, for that kind of money. It just doesn't exist, but you can in the CFL. So, yes, we will be promoting it. Yes, we will be bringing people to games, and we will be giving away tickets.
What Jim, say that again. He couldn't hear you.
Have you ever been to a Grey Cup game or festival?
That's for you, Tino.
I've been to a Grey Cup game in Winnipeg many years ago, and I can't remember the exact year because I'm just as old as you, and I'm not too good at thinking back past, say, 10 years.
Okay, let me say this in closing. If people want to really see what the CFL is about, go to a Grey Cup festival on the Saturday before the game and go visit all the different teams' rooms. I'll tell you, I've been to Super Bowls. Super Bowls are very corporate. The companies run everything, and if you know something, it's something you can get in. These are open to everybody, and it is fans of the CFL wearing their colors. It doesn't matter. I mean, you see BC people having beers with Saskatchewan and Calgary. And
for sure.
It's a sight to behold. It's something that is so special. I try to make a point every year that I can be there of just walking through the rooms and getting a chance, because that to me is what the CFL is about. If the younger crowd sees the kind of camaraderie across the country, these people, I know there's people in Toronto who have very, very close friends in Vancouver and in Calgary and in Edmonton and in Winnipeg through the CFL. And that is what makes this league so great. It's about the fans. It's the teams and the games are important, and it's important we have a great product, but it's the fans that love their teams, that follow their teams, that make that festival special. But you want a taste of what the Grey Cup's about? That's what you do. Go to a Grey Cup festival if you want to know what the CFL is all about.
I'll do that. And in closing, I got to go back to my colleague. You're the co-host of the Joe Sports Channel. How dare you not give me a ticket to go watch the BC Lions and Winnipeg Blue Bombers? How dare you? This is an insult to the podcast and to the Joe Sports Channel. I gave you authority to become a co-host, and you want to give me a ticket to go watch the BC Lions and Blue Bombers? I got to think about who's going to become a new co-host now for that one. Yeah.
Gotcha, Tino.
He doesn't know what to say. I'm kidding. All jokes aside. Jim, I got to go. I got a few errands to do, but I want to thank you so much, seriously, for, again.
Hang on, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, I think Jim wanted to say something. I heard my name, and I got to hear what he's got to say.
What were you going to say, Jim?
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
No.
I thought I heard the name Tino. See, I'm hearing things now.
No, Jim, I've learned a lot, man. And seriously, I hope we can meet, and I hope Toronto can win. And just wish you the best of luck, and take care of yourself. And God bless you and your beautiful family. And I'm sorry about your wife that you lost her over many years ago. May God rest in soul and always look upon you, my friend.
Thank you.
No problem.
And thank you, Jim, for taking the time out and giving us a wealth of information of, what you've been through and how you feel about the CFL. There's some real strong passion in your heart, and I have a ton of respect for you for bringing that out. I hope to have you back on the show sometime soon.
Thank you guys so much. You keep doing what you do. The CFL can't survive without people like you guys.
Thank you. Jim Barker.
Thank you.
Wow.
I mean,
You
the
want
guy
to
knew all our questions. He
was
had
like
all
the
our
guy-
questions nailed down.
It was like he broke into your house and he read what you're gonna say, and he broke into my house and he was gonna say. No, what a
Like
great way to end it off.
I was, you know, looking at the questions, and I'm going, well, we can't ask this question. He's just answered it. Oh, we can't ask this question. He's just answered it.
I can't. You know, what a
That's
wonderful gift.
that's probably one of our longest broadcasts. But there was really, you know, when you're talking about the CFL, which is strictly a Canadian sport. It's been around for many, many, many moons. And, you know, he's absolutely right that we need to get people more engaged to go to football games. They're not expensive. Shit, I've seen tickets here at 7-Eleven, you know, 2 tickets, Joe, 2 tickets for $30, $15 each. And they're good seats. Like, God, you can't even go to a Canuck door for that price. You're gonna have to pay $30 to park, and then you might even have to take a cab to get close to the doors. So by the time you get to the doors, it's $50, and you haven't even bought your ticket yet.
Yeah, you're paying $300-400 at least to go watch a Canucks game if you're lucky. You know?
Well, you know, a family of 3 or 4, and I feel for those families, because if they want to take their 2 kids to a game, husband and wife, you know, you're looking at a $300 to $400 night.
When I went to Toronto to watch Tampa Bay, I got those tickets for free. They were $3,000 each.
Well, yeah, of course.
This guy had a Rolex watch, and I asked him, "Are you a season ticket holder?" He says, "It's been 20 years." How much do you pay? $50,000 just for the license, and on top of that, $65,000. And look at this guy. I'm a huge Leafs fan, I'm a fanatic. But I would have put my money to that. I'd rather buy a Bugatti. I'd rather buy a house or put a car on an insurance or anything.
Right.
$65,000 or $50,000 to license the Toronto Maple Leafs. You got a lot of money. You got to have the Donald Trump.
You have to have the dineros. Joe, I just want to say something in closing. I know that you're going to be out of the country, flying out on Wednesday. So I just want to wish you and your family a safe trip, and that the good Lord watches over you and all of the people on board to get you to your destinations safely and sound, so that you can see your loved ones on the other side of the world. And again, I wish you nothing but blessings, and my prayers go out that, you know, the good Lord watches you through that time, because I know you're going for about a month and a half. I'm going to miss the hell out of you. I'm not sure how I'm going to do things without you here, but I'm going to try and figure things out, Joe. So God bless you, your mom, your dad, and anybody else who might be traveling with you to a safe and sound destination.
Thank you very much, Tino. And to close it off, words can't express how much that means to me. And I've worked 9-10 broadcasts with you, and I'm going to miss, you know, going over the questions, writing the questions down, incorrecting me, all of that. We learned a lot through this 3-4 months. And just thank you for always being there for me. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for taking over the Joe Sports channel. And listen, I wish you nothing but the best, yourself too. I hope that I get to my destination safely.
You will.
And listen, and if anything does happen to me, just remember this. This is your show. Continue the show. Continue grinding.
Hey, listen, we don't have to go over those particulars. You're going to get there safe. I want you to have a great time. You're going to be safe.
I know. I want to put those words out there if anything did happen. This show belongs to you no matter what, if anything did happen. But thank you for your words, very much encouragement.
Thank you, Joe.
No problem. To the viewers, I appreciate everything you guys have done for the last months. We'll talk soon. God bless you. Stay safe. Go Leafs, go. Jim Barker. Wonderful interview. Thank you, guys.
God bless you guys.